Tonight, you're in for a treat. We have two poets here tonight with us, and after they read, they'll answer questions and sign books. Our first artist is Liz Whiteacre. Liz Whiteacre teaches creative writing at Ball State University. She is the author of Hit the Ground from Finishing Line Press and co-editor of the new anthology, New This Week, premiered this Monday. Monday Coffee and Other Stories of Mothering Children with Special Needs. Her poems have appeared in Wordgathering, Disability Studies Quarterly, the Healing Muse, and other magazines. You can visit her website at whiteacrehitstheground.wordpress.com. Liz is an extraordinary artist, teacher, and colleague. Her work is wise, sly, and poignant. According to reviewer Linda Cronin, Liz Whiteacre has created a collection of poetry well worth reading and hearing. The words reach out to each and every one of us. Everyone has experienced pain at some point, and although it may not be constant or chronic, it is a situation that everyone can understand. We are pleased to have her here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Liz Whiteacre.
Good evening. It is such a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm going to read some stories, poems this evening that chronicle my experiences with spinal injury. Earlier today, Ida Hagman asked me some questions about the book. And one of them was, why poetry? Why did you choose to tell your story through poems? My accident took place in 2000, and a lot of time passed before I started writing frequently about it. And I started to kind of come to my experiences in little vignettes or little moments, little bits. And I found myself kind of zooming in on something that seemed significant, writing about it until I realized it was significant, and then creating a poem from that moment. So I'm going to start with a poem called Cold in a Paper Gown, my first visit to the ER. I eavesdrop in the emergency room. Next door, past thin plaster, an orderly assures a stranger who cannot see out of her left eye that her doctor will soon arrive. Soon is measured by the number of emergencies. I wait on x-rays. I cannot feel my feet. The pain in my hips and backs mimic childbirth contractions imagined each time the PA plays lullabies. They let me keep my underwear. The cotton comforts the pain when I stand or sit or lie down. My spinal fluid weeps, and the doctors whisper over my emergency. In the hall, a nurse examines the woman with a good right eye. Excuse me? The doorway stands the blinded woman. She is barefoot in a fire engine red, misbuttoned power suit. You're going to be all right, aren't you? Sure, I'll be okay. I pray I don't lie. She straightens her suit. Me too. An orderly coaxes her by elbow back to her gurney. I still shake when a nurse comes with a wheelchair and news he's contacted me a ride home. When we pass her room, the woman speaks on her phone. I'm waiting for the doctor. Yes, soon. No, I don't know what's wrong with me yet. I spent a lot of time in waiting rooms. So much so that people I was sharing my work with while I was writing started saying things like, maybe you can't have too many poems about waiting rooms. Right? Can you change the furniture? Like, can you do something for us to make it different? And that's when I realized that waiting rooms were really significant to me at that time in my life. And then I had to figure out a way to kind of condense and zone in and figure out exactly what was important about them and then focus in on those stories. So there are a lot of abandoned waiting rooms poems. Fortunately for all of you, I'm not going to read them tonight. But that was a big change. When my accident happened, I was almost 23. It was right before my birthday in the summer. I was a lifeguard. I was teaching kids how to swim. I was teaching sailing instruction at the university where I was at. And I was healthy and I was strong, and in a moment my life changed. And not only did I change physically, but emotionally too. I didn't know what my future held, and the people around me started viewing me in a lot of different ways. And so I found myself coming back to those moments as well. So I'd like to share a few poems of how people viewed me or how I thought they viewed me differently. This one's called 2 Feet Shorter Than My Usual Height. Embarrassed, she says, "I didn't know if it was you in that wheelchair." She's talking about last Saturday when Dad drove me to the mall to cheering me up. He persuaded until he wheeled me so I wouldn't tire, strain, hurt. There was a long crutch to the bank of wheelchairs, then slow maneuvering into stores. My first time, odder than showering under the eye of the middle school gym teacher. "And was that your boyfriend?" she adds, passes me chips, avoids my eyes. I was in an accident. My dad came down to take me to tests so I wouldn't be alone. I crunch and notice the chips are stale. She doesn't even offer the salsa. We'd rolled by a trendy store. Dad saw Hawaiian shirts on sale and wanted to check them out. He only left for a moment to see how a bright shirt fit his tall frame in the mirror. He didn't know it would be hard to find me, tucked between racks of obnoxious flowers and surfboards. I didn't panic when he called my name twice. I didn't feel lost, folded in the fabric 2 feet shorter than my usual height. Panic didn't burn my throat until she stared wide-eyed at me through the window when Dad pushed me, 2 bags held tightly on my lap. She turned quickly. No smile, no hello, and now, stale chips, lame party. I wonder what tokens will follow. Wonder if I will ever again turn on heel, leave assholes in wake. It's for my own good. I lie fetal on the table, and you squeeze my hand, stroke my temple. Your job today is soothing me. I can't believe I've agreed to this. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, or that I wasn't trying to get better, or that I didn't care. So I said, okay. Now I'm letting this doctor stick long needles in me. Seriously, like they were this big. That's not in the poem, but really big. I'm pinned in this thin paper gown tense, and you, a stranger, stroke my hair as my mother's done, while this doctor pushes each thick needle into my hip and back, and his assistant, who smells of spearmint, pushes and pokes my skin as each slides in to help find just the right spot. Each needle burrows a tender tunnel. I'm a cheese grater now filled with so many ragged holes stuffed with saline. Tracks throb when the metal's removed. The doctor does it again and again. The Venus flytrap extract this doctor said would numb the pain doesn't help at all. But you, a nurse who looks like my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Goulding, gaze at me and whisper how brave I am and how much you know it hurts and how after it's over, it will be better. It's for my own good. And I find myself really soothed by you. I will survive these slow invasions, the therapist's kneading of liquid that ought not exist, the workouts and the shots to follow and follow. Your voice hypnotizes. I finally believe This bulky saline solution, designed to tear tissues binding muscles together, will dissolve as we rebuild myself. Retirees pity me during water aerobics. Yes, I had several jobs over the summer between in graduate schools when my accident happened, and so I had been a full-time student and didn't get a teaching position. They made sure I got one the next year. And then I was working for quite a different, like the community center and the Girl Scout camp and the Jewish camp and the university, a bunch of different places. I was bopping around and doing all sorts of different aquatic things. And one of them was teaching retirees at the community center every Tuesday, Thursday morning, water aerobics of all things. I was their fearless leader. These decaying bodies, barely covered by black lycra, have bobbed and bent and flexed for over a year with me, as I've instructed them in the community pool on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. They've complained affectionately if the blue water is less than 78 degrees and call me sweetheart. Take it easy on us, they'd teased if I ordered one more set. Chores or Kevin's visit the coming weekend were on my mind when I shouted ski or curl or push, churning chlorinated water. Now, I've still bills to pay, chores to do, Kevin's coming visit, but I obsess if my brace looks stupid, stuffed beneath my new turquoise tankini suit. It's vanity, really, working to hide it from these men and women, some taking similar bursitis, arthritis, and pain medications. But it's ugly, like the perm I begged my mom for in 7th grade. The 2-week home trials stuck, and months of hiding the frizz and ponytails until it grew out followed. I check and recheck to make sure the straps haven't flopped out, drag on my butt, invite stares. I instruct from a cold folding chair on the pool deck, goose-bumped and on display, unable to hide behind well-coiffed hair, well-manicured clothes. My arms and legs feebly gesture moves these water aerobic veterans know by heart. Gossip and chatter is absent today, but for calls of, "How you doing, honey?" I'm no longer invincible youth, no age before beauty jokes when the ladies shuffled with me out of the locker room. I was the girl on the Clairol commercial, shiny curls swishing, confidence showing in my perky routines. I used to bounce effortlessly in the water while they struggled to keep up, their bodies protesting. And now, propped by ugly brace, I watch from the sidelines as an eager pubescent watches kids dance in the gym from the bleachers. I call scissor, egg beater, sweep, and their buoyant bodies respond, beautifully churn water. So there was a big transition period, and I think I might still be in it, where I had to learn newly what my body could do and what it couldn't do. Right? My mind had a big list of everything I could do, and my body was out of sync, out of tune with that. My body would protest in painful ways sometimes. And so it takes planning in a village to raise children, to help people through illness, through accident, those sorts of things. And it took me a little while to figure out. And this is kind of a poem about coming to that realization that you have to ask for help and you have to plan ahead when you need it. Yeah, trash fairies just don't appear. I tried summoning them. This is called Trash Can Unmoved. At dawn, I wake alone with a start, crutch quietly with precision, like my first drive alone in the Escort, the carpet foreboding as rush hour traffic, the furniture fierce as intersections, the tile sneaky as ice. Stepping so gingerly, my brace, sleep sweaty, does not move. My aluminum crutches lift up and up. We labor toward the kitchen. It takes 20 minutes, these 20-odd paces. All the bags shoved into the ugly can reek of decomposed chicken carcass, sanitary napkins, and other rank foodstuffs that cannot wait until the next collection. The can's belly is less than the width of the door, but how to move it? I can't heave it up anymore and march to the curb. It thuds when tapped at its base by a crutch's toe. It won't budge, and pain shoots down my back, down my leg. I live alone in an alley, in a shitty apartment. 2 hours until pickup, 2 hours to get this can to the curb. Kicking with foot, shoving with knee, sliding with chair and crutch, I curse and cry and pop Vicodin and eat a granola bar. Frustration floods my pores, the sweet sweat I remember from childhood when Mom flipped flashcards for mathematics, sitting parallel to me on the hard dining room chairs. The trash can finally looms on the threshold's lip, ready to stumble down the stairs. I duct tape the lid so it won't spill in flight. Crutch cocked like shotgun, it leaps toward the ugly can, launches it with furious chutzpah down the steps, and there the plastic can lay unbroken at the bottom. Muscle spasms seize my back. Spent and beaten, I'm a young woman who witnesses what random accident can do to flesh and bone, who is patched together with medications, elastic, Velcro, metal, wires, hope, who's incapable of domestic chores so simple as taking out the trash. Later that morning, this young woman crutches 40 minutes from her handicap spot in the closest parking lot to work, thinking of the trash can lying lifeless on its smooth, unscuffed belly on the cracked sidewalk, like the dead kitten she'd found after school by the curb in front of her home. She feels her sweaty, chafed armpits moan, wipes them with paper towel after taking 30 minutes to pee. Then she smiles at coworkers, says, "I'm fine, thanks for asking." So when I was developing a lot of the material for the book, I came across this prompt. I know many of you are familiar with prompts, and if you're not, make a prompt your friend. You can steal this one tonight when you get home. And it was to take an abstract concept and personify it, right? So that you could work with and talk to and deal with that idea, right, in a more concrete, meaningful way. And so, being obsessed with all things accident-related, I chose pain. And I thought about my relationship with pain and how, in a way, it's kind of like having a third wheel, right? I had my boyfriend, I had pain, who was always there, chaperoning us, looking over our shoulders, whispering in my ear. So I developed a series that I'd like to end on tonight that kind of thinks about the relationship with pain in kind of a larger scale, meeting at the bar, the pickup, right? The wooing of courtship, the breakup, and then pain showed up in the delivery room. And so I kind of skipped a little bit there, but I'll come back and fill that in later. This is called Pain Flirts. Pain comes on strong. A sweaty hand on your thigh, back arm, raising goosebumps, a little nausea because you know you'll have to be an asshole now. All night dodging hairy advances, clumsy innuendos, unmarked pills, watery drinks. Aggressive, this pain wants you but bad. Zeroes in and suddenly swindled, you flee to bathroom solitude. But pain knows no boundaries, follows you into the stall, lumbers to your car, trails you home, hovers outside your window, bellows, "You look wonderful tonight." Its shadow on the blinds dancing a polka, keeps you waking until dawn. Pain arrives on your stoop with the paper and a bag of donuts, offers to make coffee while you put up your feet, hums when it presents Vicodin and OJ on a tray. Pain courts. Pain seduces you slowly until one morning you wake to find its toothbrush in your bathroom, its underwear in your laundry basket, its non-fat vanilla soy milk in your fridge. Saturday mornings, Pain sips coffee with you on the sofa, laughs over New Yorker cartoons. Soon, you take Pain home to meet your family. It sits between you and Grandma at the long table, leaves with you at dusk, and complains bitterly the drive home of the many miles, the bread pudding, the early Monday to come. Inseparable, Pain helps prepare taxes, pick paint for kitchen walls, trim toenails. Each night before bed, it hums between the sheets. Pain is needy, doesn't like when you're unconscious, wakes you the moment you dream of something else. Pain desserts, not the good kind with chocolate. When you and Pain finally grow apart, everyone's relieved. You pack Pain's stuff in boxes, and when Pain doesn't stop Sunday as promised, you carry them to the attic. When you next poke around looking for your old blue bowling ball, you see Pain's boxes stacked and dusty, and you think, Pain might need this stuff. You should really phone. Instead, you lug your 10-pound ball down the attic's ladder. When you search for your old golf clubs, see the dusty cardboard taking up your space, you decide Pain doesn't need this stuff anymore. So you bend at the knees, lift Pain's heavy boxes. It feels good hefting them one at a time to the curb. Boxes gone, you take time after you've showered to erase Pain and Pain's friends, even the doctors who were clever at cocktail parties, from your address book. You don't care what Melanie says. You're happy if you never see Pain again. My wedding wasn't painful, and so, like I said, there's a gap in time there. But this last one is new. It's not in the collection. It was published this fall in Wordgathering magazine, which is a great magazine to check out if you're at all interested in disability studies. It's called Wordgathering.com, and they have just outstanding work by poets, fiction writers, nonfiction writers, really interesting stuff. They have tips for teaching if you're interested in teaching in your classroom. This is called Pain Pushes. Pain holds my other hand, and before I close my eyes, I see Kevin through the oxygen mask that he gentles to my cheeks. His hand cradles my knee in air. The doctor's latex palm presses my inner thigh when she guides the needle holding local anesthetic. A nurse soothes my forearm, ready to sprint for the next thing needed. Still, Pain stays steady, knows after all these years to whisper. Don't push. I hear contractions rock me. Pain pricks my spine to punctuate the doctor's warning, helping like Kevin, like the nurse, like the doctor cutting me. I forget the husha husha he he. Pain elbows my ribs, makes my breath pop. Breathe, don't push. We negotiate, Pain and I, like we might over the remote, or who's running back to the store for eggs, whether the garden can go another week without weeding. No, like we might over the best path to Texas, where we'll take her this Christmas. Soon. Pain teaches me patience, that my body can unfold, muscles bloom, nerves pulse neon. In these moments when I ask it not to push and it doesn't, and when I ask it to push and it brings forth new life. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Liz. We're going to have time for questions at the end. But I'd like to introduce our next artist, our next writer. Rachel McKibbens is a New York Foundation for the Arts Poetry Fellow and author of 2 full-length books of poetry, which are also for sale in the back of the room. Into the Dark and Emptying Field and Pink Elephant. For 4 years, McKibbens taught poetry through the Healing Arts program at Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan and continues to teach poetry and creative writing and give lectures across the country as an advocate for mental illness, gender equality, and victims of violence and domestic abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rachel McKibbens.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Liz, you were great. Well, Liz spoke of pain. I will speak of grief. You're welcome. I'll read briefly from Pink Elephant and from Into the Dark and Emptying Field, since these are the books that are on sale. But I kind of want to really read into the newer work. I have a 3rd manuscript that was just picked up. It was a runner-up in a contest, and they said, if it doesn't win, we still want to print it. So that's exciting. It's a chapbook called Mammoth. Comes out in February. This book is a memoir in verse. I grew up in an extremely abusive household, and a lot of the poetry is about that. But one of the poems that I like to kind of bust out every once in a while is what I consider a happier poem, which only means that maybe a few people die in it. I realize there are many dead people in this poem. You know what? I should. There's a. Who cares? Never mind. A Sunday cross-examination of my future next husband. In my father's house, beneath the floorboards where the wood is worn, lies a jar with a faded label. Inside is a tiny daughter pickled in rose water, her wrists held together by twine. She sings a school of copper fish. They move through the tangled pipes above her rotting head. I hear them when I bleed. If you are to love me, you must believe every word of this. Every haunted girl you knew before me has been a warning, and in the mouth of each girl, a brick with my window's name on it. I've watched a soul dance like smoke from a mouth and burn through my hair. I ate a plate of fingernails on my wedding day, made vows as the bones of friends stirred the mud beneath my gown. In 4 years, my husband's hands grew twice the size of his body, so I cut them down like men from a tree and hid them in a box. They ghost the hallways of a 6th-floor apartment in Brooklyn. My children are all 5 of my hearts unleashed. When I die, will you bring me flowers and a box of chocolates? Will my going skin be your saddest song? Do you understand? Instead of becoming a woman you grow old with, I want to be the God you run to. I'm going to read, hold on. So I have a trilogy in this book that I named the Escape Trilogy. It's the first time, the second time, and the last time. I'm going to read you the last time. But the first one speaks of when my brother and I tried to run away. We were very young. We ran away barefoot and with a pillowcase full of coins. And the second time it was my pseudo-stepmother and I that tried to leave the house. This is called The Last Time. The last time I did it alone without leaving, the welt on my face still hot. I crept upstairs, pried open the toolbox and grabbed the hammer, with his initials burned deep into the handle. My brother slept in his room, a glass box of reptiles watching over him. I turned the knob slowly, stood over my father's body, his chest heaving, then sinking, when his tongue rattled, then stopped, and the whites of his eyes rolled over, and he stared only at the weapon in my hand. And I looked at him, and I said, "If you ever touch us again, I will kill you." And then he saw me. "Okay," he said. "Okay." The second book is what I consider more truthful. And by that it means there's a far more fantastical elements woven throughout to hide people's identities, because everyone I know sucks. I keyed. I'm going to read you guys a pantoum. There was one summer, well, like every other summer, there always seems to be a rash of deaths happening to girls. And there was one in particular where it was on the news. It was about one a day for a good 8 days. And I nearly lost my mind. Being a severely empathetic person, or as my beautiful son has called me, an empath, I have this uncanny ability to literally absorb trauma in a very not healthy way. And so writing, of course, is one of my most important outlets. Poem for 3 dead girls of last summer. My sweetheart says I can no longer watch the news. You worry too much. And he is right. My fear is a drilling. It is constant and blood thick. That girl in the suitcase, that wife in the river, that woman in the elevator needed me. I worry too much. It is my right. My fear is a drilling, a songless bird perched upon my shoulder. That wife in the river, that woman in the elevator needed me, but I have 3 girls of my own. They are mine, mine, mine. And the songless bird perched upon my shoulder watches over them, my sweet little Gretels who follow me home. These 3 girls who are mine, 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 gobble up my heart like a hunk of bread. When men see them, my dear little Gretels, they follow me home. When there is a knock at the door, I stash my darlings in a cupboard. They've come to gobble up my girls like hunks of bread. Men line up like ants to take them away, to carry them home. When there is a knock at my door, I hide my darlings inside a cupboard like bowls of sugar. When they sleep, I wrap them in kite strings, line them up like ants so no one can take them and carry them home. They clutch their dolls, and all night long they wish for boys like bowls of sugar. As they sleep, I hold them like kite strings, constant, blood thick. That girl in the suitcase clutched her doll, and all night long wished she'd been a boy. My sweetheart says I can no longer watch the news. I'm going to close out this book with something fucked up or messed up. So many choices. We didn't know how to open the book. I knew what poem I wanted to open the book, but it couldn't be the first thing that the reader saw in the book. And I thought, well, how about this? Instead of a poem, I'm going to create a scene, and it kind of depicts a talk show, and that'll give you an example as to what's in store for you for the next 75 pages. So there's no title. It's just a block of text. A young woman from Afghanistan is the special guest on an American talk show. She tells her story through an interpreter, how she ran away from her husband's abusive family and hid in a field for 2 days before she was captured and returned. Shamed by this blatant lack of devotion, her in-laws hacked off her ears and nose. When the talk show host asks to see this emptiness, the young woman unravels her headscarf. The studio audience gasps at the soft ditches tucked beneath her hair, the quiet, bell-shaped hole hanging above her mouth. The talk show host announces she has a surprise for the young woman, then beckons for a serving cart to be wheeled on stage. Waiting on a silver platter are a pair of polished ears and a cute button of a nose, carved from only the finest oak. The young woman weeps in astonished joy. Then a raffle is held, and a lucky audience member comes racing down the aisle, waving his winning ticket. The man is awarded a hammer and a bucket of nails. As he pounds her new nose into place, the man can't resist, nailing the young woman's eyes shut too. He's always been a superstitious fellow. No peeking, his dear mother used to warn as she slid his gifts beneath the Christmas tree. No peeking, she'd growl as she crawled beneath his little bed. Thank you for the laughs. Here we go. Moving right on to the real grief. Woohoo, here we go. Where is that stupid poem? Not stupid. Where is that brilliant poem? So my niece was conceived in Portsmouth, Ohio, which seems like an ordinary thing that happens. That's how we were all created. We were conceived. The issue with the specifics of where she was conceived is that pediatric cancers in that area in particular, it's very concentrated, and it's an old mining town, and the water is very polluted. It's also the cotton capital of the world, and it is just it's a clearly forgotten town. I do believe that the government wants just everyone to die off so that they could just bulldoze everything and build a bunch of, big important money-making companies and buildings. So it was my sister-in-law Biz found out that Ingrid had the cancer in utero. When she was born, she had an extra piece of her this little tiny piece of her ear. And the kidney and the ear is developed at the same time in utero, which is why they're similar shape. And so they saw that excess cell growth, and so they looked, but they didn't find anything. And so when she did end up swelling on her side and her mom took her in, it was too late by that time. I'm just going to go through these. Count. I lost a lot of blood the morning I became a mother. The mirror spoke of a 17-year-old girl who'd become the amnesia of color. I was so pale I could walk through walls. And what an astonishing language, that of a mothering body. The once kind heart gone wicked and feral. Did I tell you, as I nursed my son that first hour, I felt my bones begin to thicken, spinning themselves into a coven of axe handles? But wait, it gets worse. She was changing her diaper and noticed a hard lump on her side. She took the baby to a clinic, but they didn't know what it was. They referred her to a specialist in Columbus for a biopsy. They said it might be. She said, I don't know what I'll do if I can't deal with any more of. But I've been sober for. I don't even know if my car will make it all the way to. I did everything I was. Why can't I ever? 6 months to a year. The water in the sink will not drain. I mean your body of its poison. The pump pumps, yet the fluid returns. It wants to be there to clog and waste your lungs. The rotting dishes have risen to just below the cupboard. I reach into the garbage disposal. The scalpel circles the tumor. Well-educated surgical steel, radiant and holy. Then a starched voice, scraps of peeled carrots, eyes of a potato, pale macaroni, anemomed cells clumped around a kidney. The water darkens with your baby hair. I roll up my sleeves, feel both of your hands, but only the hands, nothing else, or everything else. What's done is done. Greetings from the house of defeat. Close to the end, we were told to push the button every 8 minutes. We're handed pamphlets on how to accept the death of our loved one. After her organs shut down, the nurse shook her head. No more liquids. Desperate rules for the dying. But tell me you could have resisted when she sat up for the first time in 3 days, gray lids painted in a morphine fog, and pleaded only for water. Water? What person wouldn't abide? Wouldn't burn down the tarnished face of God if they could? Small talk. The checkout clerk asks how my day is going. Terrible. He smiles, automatic. Then he hears me. Oh, that's too bad. Sorry to hear it. I take my bag, glancing back at the counter. Did I forget someone? Did I pay for this? I don't even want this. At the traffic light, car horns blare like skinned animals. I put my foot on the gas and go. Not because the light is green, but because we put a warm sweater on the child and then we buried her. Well-wishers have named this a difficult time. They keep apologizing for how difficult it is. If there's anything I can do you need anything? How about a little goddamn honesty? How about calling it what it really is? How about stop your fucking smiling? How about breaking it down? Carrying 3 bags of groceries on each arm and holding a sleeping 3-year-old while trying to unlock your front door is difficult. Watching a coffin go by small enough to be carried by a single person is difficult. What I need somebody to do is talk about the too many dolls and the baby shampoo and the unscuffed shoes and the boxes of latex gloves and the empty car seat and the woman who survived decades of shit to end up here, an addict, 4 years sober, praising morphine in her child's final hours. What you have to do is call, picking out your baby's headstone, the ravenous hell it truly is, and say, I'm sorry. So very sorry. I'm so very sorry for this impossible time. I didn't know how to end this book. I didn't like even though it had been chosen to be published, it didn't seem right to close it the way I did. So I wrote this poem. Sometimes you have to trust when you write something in 2 minutes that's it. It's done. Drifter. I've never read this out loud. You loved me before I knew you, back when I was only a shadow, a dark existence lit by sonogram. You exhaled at the sight of my skull, a thundering nest of tiny pulses. Though I did not know you, I loved your temperature, how it coaxed my brain to brightness, a blood pilgrim orbiting your hospice. I was already dying, but I did not seek new territory. Preferred your womb's tightening hold above the wretched neons of birth, above the cruel air hurling down my inexperienced lungs. What would I have done differently? If I had reached my second birthday, would I have wished to be less temporary, or to have never been born at all? Dear, dear mother, I promise you, no. Better to have been lunar and half-seen, to have occupied the space within you, a brief galaxy I will always remember. I, your elliptical daughter, traveling endlessly, endlessly. I'm going to close out with love. How's that? Not that that wasn't love. This is, I keep Maybelline waterproof mascara in business, bitches. I really do. No one shake my hand. I've been wiping my snot on my pants for the last 3 poems. To my daughters, I need to say, go with the one who loves you biblically. The one whose love lifts its head to you despite its broken neck, whose body bursts 16 arms electric to carry you gentle, the way old grief is gentle. Love the love that is messy in all its too much. The body that rides best your body, whose mouth saddles the naked salt of your far-gone hips, whose tongue translates the rock language of all your elegant scars. Go with the one who cries out for his tragic sisters as he chops the winter's wood, the one whose skin triggers your heart into a heaven of blood waltzes. Go with the one who resembles most your father, and not the father that you can point out on a map, but the father who is here, is your home, is the key to your front door. Know that your first love will only be the first, and the second and third and even the fourth will unprepare you for the most important, the blessed, the beast, the last love, which is the most terrifying kind. Because which of us wants to go with what can murder us, can reveal to us our true heart's end in its last 30 years spent in poverty, can mimic the sound of our bird-throated mothers, replicate the warmth of our brothers' tempers, can pull us out of ourselves until we are no longer sisters or daughters or sword swallowers, but instead women who give and lead and take and want and want and want. Because there is no shame in wanting. And you will hear yourself say, last love, I wish to die, so I may come back to you new and never tasted by any other mouth but yours. And I want to be the hands that pull your children out of you and tuck them deep inside myself until they are ready to be the children of such a royal and staggering love. Or you will say, Last love, I am old, and I have spent myself on the courageless, have wasted too many clocks on less deserving, so I hurl myself at the throne of you and lie humbly at your feet. Last love, let me never roll out of this heavy dream of you. Let the day I was born mean my life will end where you end. Let the man behind the church do what he did if it brings me to you. Let the girls in the locker room corner me again if it brings me to you. Let the wrong beds find me if it brings me to you. Let this wild depression throw me beneath its hooves if it brings me to you. Let my father break me again and again if it brings me to you. Last love, I let other men borrow your children. Forgive me. Last love, I vowed my heart to another. Forgive me. Last love, I have cursed the women you loved before me. Forgive me. Last love, I envy your mother's body where you resided first. Forgive me. Last love, I am all that is left. Forgive me. Last love, every day without you was a life I crawled out of. Amen. Last love, you are my last love. Amen. Last love, I am all that is left. Amen. I am all that is left. Amen. Thanks, guys. Woo. Oh, should we?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. You can stay up here. We're going to actually open the floor to questions. So if you have any questions or ideas that you want to bring up.
Complaints.
Yeah.
Returns, exchanges. Well, I guess we sucked. Well, let's just get
We'll
out
give
of
you a
here.
second to think about it.
I know. Anyone have some Knobs Creek? That's my name.
Where was the last poem that you read? Is that in one of the books there?
No, it's only it's in Muzzle Magazine, which is online, and you can easily cut and paste, right? Paste it into a document, print it out, give it out to all your friends. So it's free. Yeah, it's on YouTube everywhere, but it's never a recording I like. But I mean, I hate my recorded voice, so there's that too. Thanks. Anyone else? Think real hard.
Have you ever thought about writing an autobiography?
Yes. Yes.
You have?
Yes. It's not out yet.
I like how succinct you are.
Well, yeah. I think Liz made up. She was talking about how it took a while to really address. Like, I really appreciated that. You have to get to a certain point beyond the trauma in order to access it, like, I guess, a writer, like an artist. Because as you're surviving it, as you're getting through it, you're just really a mess of a person. And so it's really hard to gather your thoughts. So I made this storyboard. I knew I wanted to create a memoir. Everyone who has heard even 17 minutes of a life moment is like, oh my God, that needs to be a book. And I agree, like it really does. I think I fucking earned a book. I mean, everything has happened to me and I've done everything, like it's just craziness. And so to map that though is really hard, especially when so much of my life is cloaked in either shame or lies or just or being nonverbal. So, I mean, the book opens with me in my mother's womb. I was born on Christmas Eve, And my mom left me on the doorstep of an orphanage when I was 2. And her life is, she's schizophrenic, and she's got a whole other issue going on. But it was really hard for me to ask my dad questions at his older age. He's finally revealing facts about myself and my life I did not know. When I had built up this whole entire catalog of grief and like this very specific story I had for myself and my relationship with my mom or non-relationship. And so to then be given kind of facts that opened the door towards empathy fucked my whole life up, and I haven't touched it for 3 years. I intend to go back to it. Hadn't seen her in 2 years, and she resurfaced, 20 years, and she resurfaced recently when she found out my last name. I mean, we've been living in hiding from her for decades. She Googled me, probably thinking she'd find a few hits here and there, maybe, I don't know. And there's page after page, and me revealing a lot about her as well. And so she currently wants to sue me for defamation of character, elderly abuse, all kinds of other wild stuff. So the memoir, well, I mean, there's just going to be a lot that has to go down with it. That was a very long answer. I apologize.
How did you both get to the point where you have humor in these very tragic things? Yeah, how does that come? And then
Lots of drafting.
Yeah?
No.
Miller genuine draft.
In a few words.
Do you want to?
You go.
I think at some point things just become a little absurd. And when you start to put things that have happened to you on the page, there's a distance between yourself and those events at some point, and you can look at it a little bit more like an observer and witness the humor that's there, right? I didn't find it humorous when those doctors were sticking really, really big, long needles in me. But, looking back, I see, like, okay, I signed up for this. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and that in that moment of just, complete vulnerability and kind of asking for this crazy treatment. I mean, Venus flight, it was crazy. But you get desperate, and so you do lots of crazy things. The humor comes in that. Rodney Jones is a poet I worked with at school when I was getting my MFA, and he told me, Liz, don't try to be funny. that was his advice. I'm sure it was not just to me specifically, to all young writers. Don't try to be, don't be comical, don't. And so that was something that I just gave up. It's like, I'm not going to be funny. So it is a fun experience to read to an audience and hear people laugh and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of funny. So I think that you're just trying to be honest about the moment and share as complex a perspective as possible, and that, if there's humor in that moment, then it's going to come across, and you can't try to force it.
Do people find humor where you don't?
Sometimes.
That hurts sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, this is a hardcore line, and then everyone laughs, and you're like, you dicks, and you just keep going, and you're like, oh, that was really good. I liked absurd, though. I mean, that's exactly the word, especially when it just seems like pain after pain is just piled on. You do end up laughing hysterically in the CVS parking lot. You're like having to go through your sister-in-law's Facebook and whiz past all her titty shots to find pictures of her late child to put on the collage, right? And then you're like, boobs after boobs, and it's just like, oh my God, there's so many damn titties. And you have to say that out loud because it has to break that horrifying bubble that you're in. And she died the day after Valentine's Day, so we're going into CVS, And I'm like, here, these are all the pictures I could find. I may have accidentally dragged some titty shots in there. Please don't do those. And the dude was like, Emma, this is for a baby's funeral, okay? We can't have fucking titties in it. And he was like, what? And this is so fresh. Like, this is hours. And I was given, because I'm me. They're like, Rachel, can you just do the collage and the eulogy and the blah, blah, blah. So this was all in like hours, right? So I'm like, oh my God. We never celebrated Valentine's Day. We didn't get to because we were sleeping in we were all in one Ohio shit town, broken heater, broken air conditioner, 2 creaky beds. We were sharing, it's like 6 of us in the room. And Happy Valentine's Day. It just sucked. And so I turn around, and they had a Whitman sampler, this 5 feet by 5 feet. It was a giant heart. And there's my partner just standing there with his head over, like, look at me. And he goes, you want some candy? And I turn around, and I just start, cracking up. And I drop-kicked the heart, and then the candies fell out. And it's just you just have to allow for that type of stuff to sneak its way in for relief. I'm a funny person. I was voted class clown, and that's just, hello. And I was raised by convicts, and humor is a kind of, security. It's armor. And they have to be able to snap fast. I had, none of them are alive anymore. You had to have such quick wit and just be on it and know how to diffuse a violent situation or, anything like that really quickly. And so I tend to do that. I often give, I allow my banter in between poems to make up for, all of the comedy that's not in them. But I do want to eventually talk about that. I was telling Trina earlier how, because we weren't expecting her to die when we got there, we were visiting her to say goodbye and to see her as she was alive and and then she died the very next day. And so we were stuck in Portsmouth, Ohio, and we had Walmart was the only place to go buy fancy clothes for the funeral. And it was just a really hardcore experience. And I'm trying to write that, and I'm not aiming for humor. You can't you just got to let the humor come. Can't try to be funny. It's a hard balance. Sometimes you can really screw it up, but
we don't share those publicly.
No, and and it's funny because I already have there's the Munsters comedy and the Addams Family, and I've always been Addams Family, so I'm a little darker than the average bear, and so I find humor in all kinds of stuff that's wildly inappropriate to 90% of the American population, but.
Are you both expecting your children to write poetry about?
Expecting? I pray to God they don't need to, but God. How about you? I don't know.
That's not an aspiration that we have have set.
My kids are.
This is your therapy.
Kind of. If we didn't have these outlets, I don't know where I'd be, and that's the honest truth. And I am bipolar, and I have tremendous. When I'm low, I'm real low, and the only way I've ever clawed myself out of the dark is through writing, about it, or eating lots of food. I eat my feelings because they are delicious. Taste like Funyuns and red vines.
And I think, too, that when you feel compelled to write and share, that trying to take emotions or things that other people haven't necessarily experienced themselves, but they can relate to and learn from, and I think that that's important too, sharing our stories, especially marginalized voices that we don't hear in popular media. So that way people know they're not alone, and people are encouraged to write themselves and share their experiences.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi.
What's up, Blythe?
Hey. So, do you look for poetry in your everyday life? for things to write about, or do you think like when situations just happen and then that's just a poem?
Yeah. I mean, don't you have? Oh, that's a poem. Like you say that.
Yeah, definitely. There are moments of significance, and when you have those, you have to take a moment's pause and record them, because especially as you get older, you will forget them.
Seriously, I believe that with my 5th child went the last ounce of memory. My memory, but I mean, I know when you compartmentalize or have to, and you've lived through so much trauma, that ends up happening. Because I believe my brain is like a tightened origami, and it doesn't even have room anymore for any new information, which is really troubling. I write lists. I have journals full of just words, images, lists, found poems. Someone said something whack on the subway. Someone said something ridiculous. Chuck E. Cheese, blah 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 blah, like everywhere. I steal from my kids. They're brilliant as hell. Because their mind is uncluttered. They don't have religion or society or anyone teaching them that what's wrong yet, what's appropriate. And so they say, the kids say the darndest things, and they really fucking do. And I'm going to rip their asses off. I'm going to make some money off them.
And then they can write about that later.
Absolutely,
That's the
Christina
legacy.
Crawford, give it to me. So, I just, I mean, like I said earlier, though, too, like you have to distance yourself. You have to know when it's time to write, or when it's time to just be the human processing what's going on. I think that ultimately, like, poets are more like we're like the human is a blueprint, the experience is a blueprint, and then we're the architects. We design based off of that, whether it's grief or joy, and just to learn and a lot of. I'm really interested in. Those who teach poetry who only assign poetry, because poetry. When I go out, when I teach, I say you need to go watch this movie, you need to read this essay, you need to sing this song, listen to it 4 times. Like these are all of the things that are going to help you, and maybe this book of poems as well. But I think that your poetry should be informed by every piece, Matisse, Basquiat, Dancer in the Dark, Bjork, David Bowie, Diana Ross, like everyone should be there. Otherwise, it's kind of like it's an empty art in my opinion. It's only my opinion though. I could be bullshitting you.
That's funny. I do a lot of listing too.
Yeah. I think as a mom too, we're just used to
lots of to-do lists. Like, write this poem, write that poem.
Right. I need more don't lists.
And I think, too, that you shouldn't put, do not cross tape around things, or you shouldn't think something's too mundane to write about. Sometimes the act of focusing in, I think William Carlos Williams was so good at, taking that bottle and zooming in and finding the beauty in it and finding significance in that, and taking that idea and leaping off to that moment you got that water bottle at that one time in your life, and taking leaps and finding connections. And I think unless you give yourself freedom to pull from all of your experiences and all of the things you're reading and consuming, it's hard to know what connections to even make. But I use prompts a lot, kind of like double dog dares, like write a poem with a pink elephant in it. And a lot of times then you can leap from that to an idea that you've forgotten. And that's how I've accessed a lot of things in the past, like, write a poem about whatever. Oh, I remember that one lady. And so you can do that too.
Yes.
Has your writing changed once you became a parent?
Well, I've been a parent since I was 17. I've been a parent longer than I've been anything else. Longer than I've not been a parent. Longer than I've been a writer. I was a short story writer when I was a little kid. But definitely as my writing has matured, as well as my parenting, like the first 2 kids are all fucked up because I didn't know what I was doing. But the final 3, Anthony's great on his own thing. But it's interesting that you asked that, because as we were driving, we drove from New York to here. We got here, when did we get here, Anthony? Like 1 o'clock. I was thinking exactly that, like how I've become a better parent as I've become a better writer. And I don't think that that's a mistake. I think that revision is important. And, you just don't do this same mistake and don't fall into this, pattern. And it's just very similar with your writing. Like, don't be cliched, don't do this, be open-minded. I grew up a misogynist. I hated women up until like my early 30s. I only associated that being a female with victimhood. The way I was raised, I never understood my own power. And it wasn't until being around enough other women poets and having people to admire who were like me. And that really opened the door for so much, this great enlightenment, in my opinion. And so, in a sense, they've both, I guess, definitely assisted each other. And it's exciting. The way it's changed, I guess I'm more mindful. I want my kids to be proud of me. That's the only opinion I care about. I give 0 fucks about anyone else on the planet. Like, so-and-so didn't buy my book, I don't care. Piper, did you like it? Holden, did you feel honored in this? And that's really all I care about.
Well, I've only been a mom for 6 years. So I'm still
amateur.
I'm still a newbie.
I could give you a to-do list.
You just write it on the back of there. And so I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I do find that I'm more disciplined about when I write because I have to be. It's not just juggling work and social and husband. It's also my daughter, and I don't really have many do-overs. I get one shot. Yeah. And so being much more careful about the time that I spend and making it count. And when I sit down to write, I'm there and it's meaningful because I don't necessarily get to do it every day. It can feel selfish sometimes. It's really easy to put off writing, especially when you prioritize all of these other people. And we're teaching, and so, but the students' work, and we need to get feedback, and all of these things. So it's really easy to not. It's easier to not write than to write sometimes, especially when it can be painful to write about things. And so making a commitment, and I don't know, kind of making a schedule a part of my life and my day.
Do you have a schedule for writing?
Google Calendar.
Really?
I just have it listed as busy.
That's smart.
Nobody knows what I'm doing during my busy time. Fortunately, my husband trusts me, so I don't get into trouble.
Yes.
What about the world of blogging now?
Yes.
Does blogging intrude or extrude for you?
Well, I think it's interesting because it makes writers accessible in a way that they never have been before. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting. It also gives them a lot more opportunity to mess up and say real dumb stuff. But and that's exciting as well. We get to judge more people. Awesome. But I mean, I use social media because it packs rooms. I've seen the difference. I refused to get a Facebook until pretty recently. I was about 2 years behind, and it was just a dramatic increase in the number of people who came to shows, and that was exciting. And I have a blog myself, and it has writing exercises. There's about 100 of them there. It's rachelmckibbens.com. Click on the mermaid in a jar, and then it'll open up, and you'll see it, and it's very peculiar. But I just like the idea of being an accessible artist. Because, in the olden days, back in 1987, you would just look up, you just see them on TV, and then that was it. Like, you'd never, there wasn't the paparazzi, there wasn't the internet showing you someone's crotch shot. Like, there was just nothing, and it was just not as fun as it could be now. I mean, it's got as many, downsides as it does pluses. And I'm just not overly concerned with really my monitoring my presence, which is very apparent if you read my Facebook or my Twitter. I don't have a filter, and that's probably not good for everybody, but people know that they're getting an authentic I mean, I just, I don't put up a front on there. How about you? How do you feel about blogs?
I find it terrifying. I do it. I started one with the book because I was told that was something good to do, and it is. I try to write about things connected to accident and injury and illness and getting older and, I don't know, watching my daughter do new things that I can't do anymore, and processing that. But, I can work on a poem for a long time and not have people know. And then kind of like celebrities, like a month after their pregnancy, they're fabulous. Right. Like I can be like, hey, look at this poem. And you don't know how long I worked on it. You don't know how it started or how gnarly it looked. Whereas I find with blogs and making a commitment to social media means you have to give it some attention. Otherwise, I imagine I'm letting down those two people that follow it and care. So it is hard to write a quick piece and put it up there and have it available and open for comment and those sorts of things. So I find myself feeling much more vulnerable, and it's like, oh, that's right, I did. Like people will mention, oh, how's it? I'm like, how do you? Oh, I told people that publicly.
It's. So. I mean, it can be a job. I quit posting poems online. I mean, with the exception of those that are in journals. In fact, the line from the very last poem, it opens, "Go with the one who loves you biblically." Like, okay. It's been attributed to Jesus Christ and is tweeted everywhere as Jesus Christ. He's referencing the Bible, Jesus. Before the Bible was written, right? I mean, what's going on here? And I'm just like, this is my line. What is happening here? And it's been tweeted on the Christian Monitor and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the hell? So, I mean, there's that downside. And then I'm like, I don't want to be like, hey, that's my line. Because then I'm like, is it an affront to Jesus if I'm like all up in his grill about like, that's not like, it was just the weirdest.
Jesus plagiarized.
Jesus.
That would be.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ said that. Oh, he did he?
You're going to get some letters when your book comes out.
Right? This is ridiculous. So.
I don't post poems.
Yeah, don't do it, okay?
I do all prose.
Because then they're going to be like, Martha Stewart said this.
Use duct tape on your lid.
Yeah, Joan of Arc once said.
I have a question.
What? That's
I think you
so
just
embarrassing.
got a proposal.
You know, the last person who proposed was this awesome lady, and if I wasn't going to marry her, I'm certainly not going to marry your ass. You know, I've been married once, and I failed miserably at it. I should have known him longer for 2 weeks. So we've only known each other for maybe not even an hour now, so you're going to have to wait and ask a different day. I mean, I'm here for 5 days, dude. Oh, boy.
Time for one more question?
Sure. Anybody?
I'm just curious about maybe some memoirs that you like, some authors that have written autobiographies. It's a huge field now. Everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think
I'm
of
a big David Sedaris fan.
You know, I'm embarrassed. I've never read a single one of David's books.
You don't need to. You can do audiobook.
Yeah, they're better.
Oh,
It's him reading it?
yes.
That's, okay, I mess with that. That's what I'll do because I drive forever. I don't like to fly. Okay, this is weird. This is very obscure. You can find it for $2 on Amazon. It's called Even Dogs Go Home to Die. It's by Linda St. John. It is a memoir done in little vignettes. It's written in dialect. Her mother was, I want to say like Russian or Polish, something where she goes, Linda, L-E-E-N-D-A. Like, I just love it. And it's really gritty and dark, and it has no love in the universe, and I have no idea why. I think that it is such a beautiful memoir. I'm trying to think of, I've purposely not read too much. I read biographies very often, but I'm trying to I know I have memoirs in my head, I just can't think of anything right now. Because I've been writing my memoir for I started 4 years ago. I wrote 75 pages in 3 days, and then when I got my dad's stuff and all the information, I have not touched it since. That's 3 years. but I'm purposely, I mean, it's definitely going to be considered creative nonfiction, and it has what I'd consider strange, I'd say strange elements throughout, but I mean, I like memoirs in verse too. Like I like Nick Flynn's Some Ether. He did another Bullshit Night in Suck City, which is a great memoir that got turned into Being Flynn or something, as some Robert De Niro flick that bombed. But another Bullshit Night in Suck City was one that touched me. To be honest, though, I mean, when I read, oh my God, that's what it is. Dry by Augustin Burroughs kills. What is the one? Running with Scissors?
Yes.
I read that, I was like, this is kid stuff. Like, this is nothing. Like, you know, and then Dry, whole new level. Because he's grown up. He's a more mature writer. And it's about being an alcoholic, and it's written in a way that it cannot be touched. So then I was like, okay, I trust you again. Because I read Running with Scissors, and I thought it was really, it just didn't do a thing. So then I had Wolf at the Table? Also by him. It's about his father. That broke me in a way that I was unprepared for, because I think a problem with some of us trauma Olympic players, you know, it's like we're like, that's nothing, you know, and you can't do that. But it doesn't even have to be like the same measure in terms of trauma, like the same balance or any of that. What it has to be done is done well. That's it, period. It doesn't have to be a worse story than someone else. It just has to be written well. And that's what these two do, that I think, I mean, he should be a zillionaire for these two books. Forget Running with Scissors. It's these two that I think he finally arrived. And I'm going to go outside. Like, what are your go-to books? Like, what are your favorite books that are not just memoir, whatever? Anything? Like, if you were on a desert island. If tonight you and I were on a plane,
I would take my phone and
to
Amazon Prime, baby.
Right. I mean,
I just need a good tower. Well, one,
I've done.
well, is it Doug Crandall?
I don't know. I don't
See,
remember these
it's terrible
people.
when you're filming. I have a very bad memory. You can edit in over. I'll just go like this. But it's a memoir about. He grew up in Indiana, and I think it's called like Flip the Bird, Pig Boy. But it's about him and his father, and they were working in northern Indiana. And his father's addiction and affair, and he's working in a factory, and just it was a really interesting story about family and kind of learning to love each other's faults. And he has several books about his life in Indiana, but I found those recently really powerful. Those you have to read. You can't get those on audio.
Do you like Moby Dick?
Yes.
Moby Dick is one of my favorite books of all time. That prose is insane. What else? What else is there? Bluest Eye, and God of Small Things, like turned my whole life around in big, exciting ways.
I think sometimes too, Google is so powerful where if you find a writer that you like, and I don't know, they've talked to people, there's usually a record, and you can find, you know, like these types of conversations where,
Interviews,
I really love.
Or you Google image them and you print out their picture and you tape it to your ceiling.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or not.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know.
But that's another
Google,
way.
Google's your friend.
Well, I don't know, I like to troll, and so it's another way to find writers that maybe you wouldn't necessarily get to in your circle of reading, and get recommendations that way, because I figure, well, if those people who I admire are reading that, they're being influenced in some way. So I don't know. I do a lot of commuting, and so I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so I'm kind of at the mercy of my public library.
How do you get those? How do you get? Oh, public library. Yeah, tell me where to go.